fairy tale we're going to hear today is called Beauty and the Beast. Are any of you familiar with the story? This fairy tale is retold and illustrated by Jan Brett. She may tell the story a little differently from the version you have read or seen. So as you listen, think about the characters and the events, as well as the characteristics that you notice about fairy tales. Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time there lived a merchant's daughter, so lovely and kind that all who knew her called her Beauty. A merchant is someone who buys and sells goods, especially on a large scale. She lived with her father and 2 sisters, in wealth and without worry. Then the merchant met with great losses, and the family, suddenly penniless, fled to a country cottage. The man and his children were forced to do the work of peasants. 2 of the sisters could only remember their former fine life and cried and grumbled. But Beauty worked on bravely and tried to comfort her father. Time passed until one day news came that one of the merchant's ships, long lost, had arrived in port. Hoping to restore his fortune, the merchant decided to meet the ship. Before leaving, he called his 3 daughters to him. He asked them what they missed most from their old life, as he wanted to bring back a present for each. The first sister asked for rich gowns, since her closet held now only rags. The second asked for a coach and 4 horses, since she was now forced to ride upon a donkey. But Beauty asked only for a rose, since the garden was now taken up with cabbages. So the 3 sisters here asked their father to bring home very different things. What does each sister's request tell you about her? Share your ideas with a partner. Upon reaching the ship, the merchant found the cargo spoiled and worthless. Poorer than ever, he could not afford a night's lodging, and was forced to return home through threatening weather. He pushed through a deep forest until snow covered the track, and he was hopelessly lost. Just when he felt he could no longer go on, he saw an avenue of orange trees, untouched by snow, and beyond them a grand palace. As the merchant approached the palace, the doors opened up before him. Inside, he found himself in a great hall with a blazing fire and a sumptuous meal waiting. Strangely, he saw no one about. He dined and soon fell asleep in his chair. The next morning the merchant awoke to find his wet clothes replaced with fine garments. Again he saw no one, not master or servant or any person in the house. And when he stepped outside to go home, he met another kindness. A magnificent horse, fitted out for a journey, stood waiting for him. Just as he was about to mount the animal and be on his way, the merchant spied a bed of beautiful roses. Remembering his promise to Beauty, he knelt to pick one. No sooner had the stem snapped than the merchant heard a dreadful, angry roar. Turning around, he saw a fearsome beast coming toward him. "How dare you harm my roses?" bellowed the beast. "A rose that's cut can only die." Reaching for his sword, the beast cried, "You shall pay for your ingratitude with your life." The terrified merchant fell to his knees. "I have only taken this rose as a gift for one of my daughters, the faithful Beauty," he pleaded. Hearing this, the beast stopped to reconsider. At last he growled, "I will spare your life, but only if one of your daughters willingly returns in your stead." The merchant was unable to agree to such a bargain. After promising the beast that he would return, he rode home to say goodbye to his children. So if you know this story, talk about whether things are happening as expected. Is there anything different? It was a somber homecoming, for after the merchant gave Beauty the rose, he told the story of the grim beast and his cruel punishment. But Beauty would not hear of her father's return to the palace and certain death. After all, he would have never plucked the rose if it weren't for her. She made up her mind to go at once to the place. So strong was her resolve that the merchant could not dissuade her. When father and daughter arrived at the palace of the beast, the towering doors again opened as if by magic. They entered the great empty hall, and fear took hold of them. They heard the sound of footfalls and saw a creature, part man, part animal of the forest, moved toward them. Overcoming her terror, Beauty stepped forward. "Good evening, my lord," she said.
"Good evening," replied the creature, "but do not call me my lord, for I am a beast, and you must call me so."
Not knowing what else to do, Beauty nodded. Then the beast presented the merchant with a casket containing a fortune in coin and jewels.
"This will restore your house handsomely," he said, "so now be gone."
And with that the beast walked off into the shadows. The merchant bade a tearful farewell to Beauty. Then the great doors opened once more, and he rode away, leaving Beauty quite alone. So let's pause here. I want to think about what's happening in the story so far. What are your thoughts about Beauty returning to the palace with her father? Why don't you guys turn off the video and talk about it for a little bit? Thus Beauty began her new life in the palace of the Beast. It soon became clear that she was in no danger, and that she was free to amuse herself in any way she wished. She wandered among the rooms and explored the galleries. Each provided a delightful new entertainment for her, as if her tastes were already known. A troop of monkeys, all in court dress, appeared to serve her. A charming little dog did duty as her page. Look at this guy. He's on his feet walking. In fact, animals of all sorts took the place of gardener, cook, and gamesman. A beautiful bird led her to her bedchamber, and Beauty saw that the room was filled with her favorite things and was thoroughly comfortable. I think it's really cool to look at the animals in Beauty, and then look here behind her in this painting. The animals have been turned into people. As evening approached, candles throughout the house lit up by themselves. When dinner was served, animal musicians played sweet music. It was then that the beast appeared. Beauty drew back, frightened at the thought of dining with the creature, but the beast's courtly manners disarmed her fears. After dinner, the beast reassured Beauty with charming conversation until it grew late. Then the beast became solemn. At last he turned to her and said, "Beauty, will you marry me?" Beauty, lowering her eyes, replied, "Pray, don't ask me that." So how does the beast treat Beauty here? And what does that tell you about him? The days afterward followed much in the same pattern, and they passed happily for Beauty. The daylight hours were filled with amusements, and Beauty started to look forward to dinner time and her nightly talks with the beast. His thoughtful ways began to win her trust. But always she dreaded the moment when he took his leave, for then he would always ask, "Beauty, will you marry me?" It grew more and more painful for her to lower her eyes and say, "Pray, don't ask me." Let's pause here for a second. Why do you think the beast asks Beauty to marry him each night? And why do you think it becomes more painful for Beauty to say no? Let's keep reading. Are you guys looking at the paintings behind each time? Interesting. Then came a day that passed so happily that when the beast came to her, Beauty spoke of her great joy. "The flowers in the gardens have never been more beautiful," she said, "and the musicians have never played more sweetly." The beast again asked for her hand, and with such tender hope that she said, "I cannot marry you, beast, but I will indeed stay here of my own accord, as long as I shall live, if only you will grant me one request. Let me first say goodbye to my father and the world I leave behind." The beast agreed to this, although a mournful look came over him. He gestured to the crescent moon and said, "Return before the moon is full, faithful Beauty, or you will break your poor beast's heart." And then he gave her a golden ring and said, "When you wish to come back, turn this ring 3 times around your finger and say out loud, 'I want to be in the palace of the beast again.'" Within the instant, Beauty was back in the house of her old childhood. She saw her father bartering for goods as of old. Her sisters were ordering their maids about as in former times. Finding Beauty in their midst, they all flew to her in amazement. They asked question after question about her strange life in the palace, and about the monster who ruled there. Beauty tried to explain her admiration for the Beast and the wonders of the palace, but they did not understand. They seemed pleased when the conversation flowed back to the social life of the town. But following weeks went by in a whirl. Laughing young men coaxed Beauty out to go out for walks and rides. Her father escorted her to concerts and the opera, and her sisters presented her with a list of engagements that began with dress fittings and ended with fancy balls. There was not a moment left in the day for her to think about the distant palace and the sad, ugly Beast. Beauty forgot her promise to him. And one night, after much gaiety and dancing, Beauty was exhausted. She fell into a fitful sleep, and as she slept she dreamed. She was back in the palace garden, now strangely dark and cold. She was searching and searching, looking for something she had lost, and then she saw the Beast lying on the ground, still as death. Beauty awoke from the dream, stricken with grief, but at last knowing her own heart. None of the young men that she had met, and none of the things she had done, meant as much to her as the times that she had shared with the Beast. Beauty turned the golden ring 3 times around her finger and said out loud, "I want to be at the palace of the Beast." At once she was transported through the night to the palace gates. Guided by her dream, she flung them open and ran into the garden. There she saw the still form of the Beast. Oh, so sad. Fearing that he might have already left this world, Beauty dropped to his side, and taking the Beast in her arms, she gave way to her sorrow. Her tears raining down upon his furry head worked to revive him, and he was able to open his eyes and look at her. At this she implored him, "Dearest Beast, you must be strong and live, so that we may be man and wife, for I love you so." When these words were spoken, the world began to whirl around them. Stars fell from the sky, and the palace was illuminated as if by 1,000 candles. And before her, Beauty saw not the Beast, but the radiant face of a handsome young prince. For in pledging herself to the Beast, Beauty had unlocked a fantastic spell. Taking Beauty's hand, the young prince explained all of the curious events to her. Some years before, a meddlesome fairy, displeased with people for trusting too much in appearances, had cast a spell over the palace and everyone in it. All of the servants were changed to animals, and the prince was made to look like the ugliest and most fearsome beast in the forest. The spell would only be broken when a beautiful woman forsook all the others and promised to marry the Beast in spite of his appearance. And that is what Beauty had just done. There was much rejoicing within the palace that night, but no one was happier than Beauty and the prince. They were married the very next day and went on to live happily ever after. What do you think about the ending? Does it fit with what you have learned so far about fairy tales? Talk this over with people in your class. Hope you have a great rest of your day.